All right, good evening, East Alabama and West Georgia. Dr. Don in here with you. We are broadcasting from the Emergency Operations Center in White County, Georgia tonight. I'm not in studio, so things are going to look a little bit different on your screen because we typically do all of this in the studio, and we're not there tonight because we're having to deal with things up here in the northeast Georgia mountains as well as trying to watch what's going on in East Alabama and in West Georgia. Got to tell you, it's been a pretty amazing day watching hurricane continue to develop and grow throughout the afternoon, and it now unfortunately looks like we're going to see a very, very strong life-threatening hurricane slam into the Big Bend area of the state of Florida. We're talking storm surge of up to 20 feet. Right there in the bend of the Big Bend area of the state of Florida. That is unprecedented. This will be the strongest and fastest forward-moving hurricane to ever hit that part of Florida, and it is going to cause catastrophic, unprecedented damage as it makes landfall there in the northern panhandle of the state of Florida. It's going to stretch on up into Georgia, and we're going to see a considerable amount of damage all the way up into South Georgia as well. I'm afraid that this is going to rival Hurricane Michael or even worse for those of you in South Georgia. Now, obviously, it's going to be much worse in Florida, then right along the Georgia Florida state line, and then maybe up to a point just south of Albany, Georgia. It's going to be a long night and a long period of recovery after this is over with. We get Category 3 or Category 4 winds up into South Georgia. It is going to cause a significant amount of damage to trees and power lines, utilities. There will even be structure damage as well in that part of the state. So if you're, maybe from Albany south, you need to really pay attention to what's going on with the weather. Listen to your local officials in those counties and follow their advice throughout the remainder of this event. It's almost a guarantee that you're going to lose power at some point during this storm. So make sure that. And the unfortunate part about this is some of you, when you lose power, you lose internet, you lose your cell phone service. It's amazing to me that we have spent billions of dollars in this country over the last 10 to 15 years to improve the internet infrastructure, yet it's probably worse now than it ever has been. But that's a discussion for another time. It's during times like this we desperately need to have those services in place and have them working. But like I said, I'll get off on a soapbox if I'm not careful here. It just irritates me when we have emergencies like this and we start losing connectivity. This is the United States of America. That should not be happening. But anyway, so a horrible situation unfolding there in the Big Bend area of Florida that will stretch into South Georgia. There will be problems there. As a matter of fact, the National Hurricane Center has now extended the hurricane warning up into South Atlanta Metro. So we're going to be looking at 70, maybe even 80 mile per hour wind gusts up into the southern parts of Atlanta will certainly be possible. The storm appears to be moving a little bit further to the east. So I think that's good news for East Alabama and West Georgia. You're still going to feel some effects from this hurricane as it moves up through the state of Georgia tonight. But remember, you're on the west side of the storm. And that is the side of the storm that you want to be on if you have to be anywhere close by when there's a hurricane moving through. So I believe that you may see some power outages across East Alabama. I think you definitely will see power outages across West Georgia. I don't know that they will be as widespread as what we're going to see in the state of Georgia as we get into the thick of things after midnight tonight and through the pre-dawn hours of tomorrow. For those of you watching us up here in northeast Georgia, we have been diligently getting out the message this afternoon to all of our residents of White County, Georgia, to be prepared to shelter in place for up to 36 hours. We do not want you out on the roadways. We do not want you traveling to Helen or Cleveland to see if you can find an open restaurant. You should have food in your home now, and we're asking you that once this starts and trees start to come down and we start to lose the power grid, shelter in place in your home and be prepared. We're not telling you, there's not some kind of order that says you have to shelter in place. We're asking you to be prepared to have to shelter in place for up to 36 hours so that we can get out there and get the roadways clear, so that the utility companies can get out there and get the power lines back up and return your services to you. One other thing I want to say before I start to talk specifics about the weather, and this is true everywhere across, regardless of where you're watching me from this evening, and it has to do with your 911 center. Folks, understand most 911 centers get overwhelmed very quickly in events like this, because you have to realize that not only are they taking your phone calls, but they're also dispatching this out to the service providers. So it gets extremely busy in the 911 center, especially specifically here in White County. And I'm asking you to really think, is this an emergency? If it's not an emergency, we have a non-emergency number that you can call. Most 911 centers have a non-emergency number. If you don't know what that is in your location, you should be able to Google it and find that non-emergency number. That would be the number you call. Reserve dialing 911 for emergencies only. Don't call 911 to ask about road conditions, because all you're doing is tying up that operator when he or she could be answering an emergency call. Don't call the 911 center to ask about weather conditions. If the emergency alert system goes off and the outdoor warning sirens are activated, please don't call the 911 center to ask why the sirens are going off. If those sirens are going off, that means a tornado warning has been issued for White County, and that is the case in most jurisdictions across the area. There are a handful of counties that will activate their outdoor warning siren during a severe thunderstorm warning. However, here at White County, it has to be a tornado warning officially issued by the National Weather Service. So if you hear the sirens going off and you call 911, you're calling us right in the middle of the busiest time we could possibly have. So please refrain from doing that as well. If you have an emergency, absolutely call 911. We will respond to you as quickly as we possibly can. Now, once we get into the height of this thing, and I think across White County, it will be after 6 a.m. Friday morning, some of the lesser serious calls we may have to put on hold for a minute until the weather will allow us to get out and respond to you. So please be patient with your 911 centers as we go throughout this event. Back to East Alabama and West Georgia. You guys are still under a tropical storm warning, and I think 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts certainly plausible, especially the further west you go. I think we could see that in the easternmost counties across East Alabama, and then as you get into Georgia, I think that's a much better probability that you'll see the higher end of those gusts, around 40, maybe 45 miles per hour. And then as you get toward Atlanta, again, the southern end of Atlanta now has been placed under hurricane warning. So there, you'd be looking at 50, 60, 70, even 80 mile per hour wind gusts from time to time on the south side of Atlanta. And I think maybe down toward Columbus, we might be looking at the same thing from time to time as well. The timing for East Alabama and West Georgia, probably after 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. The timing for Northeast Georgia, probably after 6 a.m. before we get into the height of the wind. Not to say we can't have wind gusts before then. We certainly can. As we get these outer feeder bands spiraling up into Georgia and Alabama, you could have occasional sustained winds of 20, 30 miles per hour. And even a small spin-up tornado is not out of the realm of possibilities here. The tornado threat is not going to be very strong across East Alabama or West Georgia, but it is not zero. So always be ready for those short-fused tornado warnings in a tropical event, because they can happen just about anywhere at any time. So that's kind of where we're at right now, and we believe that, again, we'll be getting into the absolute height of this thing as we approach 3 a.m. That would be across East Alabama and West Georgia, and then up to the Northeast Georgia mountains, probably after 6 a.m. Up here in Northeast Georgia, we are also under a tropical storm warning. We could see wind gusts approaching 50, 60, 70 miles per hour. And even up on the ridge tops, we could be looking at a few wind gusts of 80 miles per hour or better. Understand the wind's not going to blow that strong all the time. We're talking gust. So you could get a quick gust of 60 or 70 miles per hour. And then as the storm starts to take that northwest turn, the wind is going to shift in a different direction. So then we get another gust of 50 to 60 miles per hour out of a different direction. The tree's already weakened from the first gust. Now here comes another gust from a different direction, and that tree just gives in, and it falls. And I am awfully afraid up here in Northeast Georgia, back down toward Atlanta, and south all the way to the Gulf, we are going to have numerous trees down and widespread power outages. Sporadic outages and some trees down across East Alabama is certainly plausible, and as you get into West Georgia, that's going to increase, and by the time you get to Atlanta, I think it will be widespread. So that's kind of where we are right now. That's our thinking. So let me jump over to the radar and kind of show you where we're at right now and where we think we are going to be going. This is a live look at the radar. We currently do have some tornado warnings in play, and that's going to be down there around Albany, Georgia, from Baconton back over toward Newton, Georgia, and then to the north and northwest, near Leary, Georgia, Morgan, Georgia, and then west to the west of Albany is where that possible tornado is. And I will bring this current and stop it and show you right there is where the possible tornado would be. Now, Albany, you're well to the north and northeast of this rotation, so you don't have anything to worry about for now in the Doherty or Albany, downtown Albany or east side of Albany area. But over on the western side of Doherty County is where that possible tornado is in extreme southwest Doherty County, moving to the northwest. We'll zoom back out and have patience with me. This is not my normal radar, so I'm having to figure out where all the buttons are. And what I want to do is take you down and show you what the hurricane is now. There's your Category 4 storm. Lateral, maybe a little bit northwest of lateral to Tampa, Florida. And it's moving to the northeast at 23 miles per hour. That's relatively fast for a hurricane that's about to make landfall. Typically, hurricanes move, 7, 8, 9, 10 miles per hour. 23 mile per hour forward motion is pretty fast, and that's why we're going to see such high winds punch so far inland. It's going to be because of the forward motion. The storm's just not going to have enough time to weaken much before it gets well up into the state of Georgia. So that's why I'm particularly concerned from St. Mark's over to Perry, Florida. That whole area there is going to see a tremendous amount of wind damage. It will be catastrophic out here on the coast. We're talking, last time I looked at the inundation, we're talking about the possibility of up to a 20-foot storm surge right there in the northeast quadrant of the storm as it crosses just south of Monticello just to the south and east of Tallahassee, we believe, is where landfall is going to be. Then as it moves on up into Georgia, maybe it crosses into Georgia just to the southeast of Thomasville. And then Moultrie, Georgia is in the path of this storm. Norman Park, Georgia would be pretty close to this storm track. And then near Sumner, Ty, and just to the right or just to the east of Sylvester, between Albany and Tifton is where we believe the storm will track. And then it's going to start that turn to the northwest, somewhere in that general area. Should bring it up close to Cordele, running parallel and just to the west of the I-75 corridor. And then on up to the north, maybe just east of Montezuma, and then near Reynolds, Georgia. And then continuing to the north, crossing pretty close to Barnesville, and then eventually Forest Park, and then right across downtown Atlanta, maybe through Sandy Springs, up near Canton, and then toward daybreak tomorrow morning, it may make it back into northeast Alabama before making it up into the state of Tennessee. So that is the projected track at the moment. I know the track has wiggle-wobbled several times. It shifts to the west and shifts back to the east, but I don't want you to pay attention to where the exact track of the storm is going to take place. You know, hurricanes are much different than tornadoes. Tornadoes are relatively small compared to a hurricane. I mean, this hurricane is 400 miles wide, to give you an idea. Most tornadoes are only about 100 to 200 yards wide. So there is zero comparison here. So it really doesn't matter exactly where the storm tracks. The thing is, you want to stay on the west side of the track. If you're along the track or to the right or east of the storm, that's where the worst weather is going to take place. Again, let me recap for East Alabama. I think we're looking at, sorry about the audio there, folks. For East Alabama, I think we are looking at wind gusts probably in the order of 20 to 30 miles per hour for the most part. There could be an occasional gust 35, 40, even 45 miles per hour. Can't be ruled out. And the further west or further east you go, I apologize, the further east you go from East Alabama into West Georgia, the stronger the winds are going to be, and we now have hurricane warnings all the way up to South Atlanta Metro, up to near Griffin, Georgia. There's a hurricane warning in place there. Tropical storm warnings continue for the easternmost counties in Alabama and all of West Georgia down to the Columbus area. And there we start with the hurricane warnings all the way down to the Florida-Georgia state line. The timing across East Alabama and West Georgia for the highest winds, again, will probably be after 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. Up here in northeast Georgia, we're looking at probably after 6 a.m. before we get into the height of this. But we certainly could have problems before then with some of these thunderstorms. We see a lot of thunderstorms making it up into South Atlanta. Some of those already over Columbus. And some of that could wander into East Alabama as well, and that could produce some gusty winds well before the effects of the hurricane get here. So there you go. That's our take on how things are going to go as we go throughout the night. I will continue to update you as I can. And we will continue to give you live updates as often as possible here on Dr. Don's Weather. We'll also be doing live updates over on the White County Public Safety page on Facebook. For those of you maybe across East Alabama and West Georgia that would just like to follow that, to kind of follow along with what's going on up here, I invite you to do that. Just go to Facebook and search for White County Public Safety. And you can follow us over there on Facebook. I'll be doing a live over there in just a few moments, talking specifically about White County, Georgia. So be safe out there, folks. Make sure you stay indoors, especially if the wind does start to get gusty. It's not safe to be out there on the roadways. You lose power at your house, just hunker down and stay off the roadways so that your responders and utility company can get out there and start with that recovery process. And we'll continue with our coverage as needed here on Dr. Don's Weather. So stay with us. And again, thank you for joining us this evening.